The Millionaire's triplets were blind, until the old beggar changed everything. The three were born into a life of luxury, with a home that could have been mistaken for a palace. Their father, Jonathan, was a wealthy businessman who had built his fortune from nothing, and their mother, Isabella, was a woman whose elegance and poise could light up any room. People often said the family was perfect, but perfection, as Jonathan and Isabella knew, could hide many struggles beneath the glittering surface. The first thing anyone noticed about the triplets was their eyes. From the moment they were born, their eyes seemed like windows to another world, yet they never seemed to truly see the world around them. Doctors whispered words like rare condition and genetic disorder, words that made Jonathan's chest tighten with fear. The medical terms were confusing and the treatments were complicated, but the simplest truth remained. The children could not see. At first, Isabella refused to believe it. She held each baby close to her, whispering promises of brightness and joy into their tiny ears. "You will see one day," she would murmur, rocking them gently in the nursery. But the babies remained in darkness, and the truth settled into the corners of their lives, quiet but unshakable. Life in the mansion was a mix of wonder and frustration. The home was filled with every luxury money could buy: toys, books, soft carpets, and the gentle hum of machines designed to aid the blind. The children had the best tutors, doctors, and caregivers, yet all these things could not replace the ability to see. They relied on touch, hearing, and smell, learning to navigate their world with patience and practice. But the world outside their home was a mystery, one they longed to explore. Amira, the eldest by minutes, was quiet and thoughtful. She often sat by the window, listening to the sounds of birds and the wind, imagining colors she could never see. Leo, the middle child, was lively and curious, always reaching for objects and asking questions in his soft, eager voice. Sophia, the youngest, had a gentle soul. She would hold her siblings' hands and laugh at their jokes, her laughter like a small, bright light in the dim room. Together, they formed a little universe of their own, one that was safe but limited. Their parents tried everything to give them a sense of normalcy. Isabella arranged music lessons, tactile painting sessions, and storytelling hours where the children could let their imaginations soar. Jonathan, who was often busy with work, spent his evenings reading aloud to them, describing the city streets, the gardens, and the sky in such detail that the children could almost picture it. But no matter what they did, a part of the world remained forever out of reach. The city outside the mansion was alive and vibrant, full of colors, smells, and sounds the children could only imagine. They could hear the chatter of the marketplace, the clatter of carts on cobblestones, and the distant rumble of traffic. Occasionally, they would hear someone describe a sunset or the sparkle of rain on the pavement, and their minds would fill with wonder. It was in these moments that the triplets felt the sharpest pang of longing, a desire to see, to touch, and to truly know the world that existed beyond the walls of their home. Despite their challenges, the triplets were not unhappy. Love and attention surrounded them like a warm blanket. But as the children grew older, the limitations of their blindness became more apparent. Simple tasks, like dressing themselves or pouring water into a glass, required constant guidance. Friends outside the family were few, as parents worried about the dangers the world might hold for children who could not see. Even within the mansion, small accidents happened. A spilled drink, a bump against a table, a misstep on the stairs. Each incident was minor, but it reminded the family of the gap between the triplets and the world they could not fully experience. One quiet afternoon, Amira sat on the balcony, her legs swinging gently over the edge. She listened to the sound of children playing in the distance and the soft rustling of the trees. "I wish we could see," she whispered to herself, a small, fragile hope hiding in her voice. Leo, who was nearby, paused and put his hand over hers. "We will someday," he said, though neither of them truly knew how. Sophia, lying on the soft rug in the sunroom, giggled softly and said, "Maybe one day magic will come." The children laughed together, though the laughter carried a hint of longing, a desire for something that seemed just out of reach. Their parents noticed these moments and felt a mixture of pride and sorrow. Jonathan often stood in the doorway, watching the children explore their world with curiosity and determination. He admired their resilience, but his heart ached for the experiences they were missing. Isabella, meanwhile, would sit with the children for hours, teaching them about colors, shapes, and light in words, painting images with her voice so vivid they could almost feel them. But deep down, she too longed for a miracle. The mansion itself was designed with the children in mind. Hallways were wide and free of obstacles, furniture had soft edges, and tactile markers helped the triplets move from room to room. Technology played a part as well. Talking devices, braille labels, and specially designed toys allowed the children to explore and learn in ways most kids could not. Yet for all the tools and care, the most basic experience of life, seeing, remained impossible. Visits from friends and relatives brought joy, but also a reminder of what the children could not do. They could not see the smiles, the clothes, or the toys of others. They could not watch a butterfly land on a flower or see the colors of the sunset. Every description, every word, every sound became a window into a world they could only imagine. And still, they hoped. The triplets' bond was extraordinary. They understood each other in ways no one else could. Amira often guided her siblings by describing the path ahead. Leo's curiosity drove them to explore new parts of the mansion together, while Sophia's calm presence provided reassurance during moments of uncertainty. Together, they navigated a world built on touch, sound, and imagination, creating a rich and detailed life despite their blindness. Yet beneath the surface of routine and comfort, a quiet question lingered in every heart. Could they ever truly see? Could they experience the colors, shapes, and wonders that others took for granted? The thought of sight became more than a wish. It became a dream, fragile but persistent, carried in the small moments of joy, curiosity, and hope. One evening, as rain fell softly against the windows, the family gathered in the living room. Jonathan read aloud from a book of stories, Isabella explained the colors of a garden, and the triplets listened intently, imagining each detail. The sound of rain pattering against the roof created a rhythm that filled the room with calm. And yet, as the children sat together, a quiet longing settled over them. The world was vast and beautiful, yet it remained just beyond their grasp. Amira closed her eyes and reached out her hand, feeling the edge of the table. "I want to see the rain," she whispered. Leo's fingers brushed hers. "Me too," he said softly. Sophia nodded, her voice gentle but firm. "We will see one day." "I just know it." The parents exchanged glances, a mixture of hope, fear, and determination reflected in their eyes. They loved their children more than anything, and they knew that wealth and comfort alone could not fulfill their heart's deepest desire. Days passed in a similar rhythm. The triplets explored, learned, laughed, and dreamed. The mansion remained their safe haven, filled with love, technology, and care. Tutors and specialists continued to guide them, each trying to bring light to their world in different ways. The children's imaginations flourished, and their bond grew stronger with every passing day. Yet the unspoken question remained, could the impossible happen? Could they one day see the world in all its richness, color, and beauty? In the quiet moments, the triplets often wondered about the world beyond the mansion walls. They imagined bustling streets, vibrant gardens, and skies painted with color. They pictured faces, animals, and objects they had never seen. And though they had never experienced sight, they understood its power. They understood that seeing would change everything, not just the way they navigated the world, but the way they felt, connected, and dreamed. For now, the triplets lived in a delicate balance between reality and imagination. Their lives were full of love, care, and comfort, but also longing, curiosity, and hope. Each day brought new experiences, small victories, and challenges to overcome. And in every moment the question lingered unspoken but deeply felt. Could someone, somehow, change everything? Could a miracle reach them in a world so full of darkness? And so the story of Amira, Leo, and Sophia began, not with sight, but with hope, curiosity, and a desire to see the world in ways they had only dreamed. Little did they know that one day, everything would change, and the darkness that had defined their lives would be transformed in ways they never imagined. Life inside the mansion continued with its familiar rhythm, yet a sense of anticipation lingered in the air. The triplets, Amira, Leo, and Sophia, had grown into children full of curiosity and energy, always exploring every corner of their grand home. Yet the darkness that surrounded them was not just the absence of light, but a quiet reminder of the world they could not see. Their parents, Jonathan and Isabella, tried their best to make their lives full and joyful, filling the rooms with music, stories, and the gentle hum of life. But still, something was missing. One rainy afternoon, Jonathan decided to take a drive through the city. It was rare for him to spend time away from the office, but the heavy clouds and soft drizzle seemed to call for a quiet escape. The city streets were slick with rain, and the usual bustle was softened by the steady patter of water on pavement. Jonathan drove slowly, thinking about his children, their laughter, their questions, and the longing in their voices whenever they spoke about the world they could not see. As he turned a corner near the market district, something unusual caught his eye. On the side of the street, sheltered under a small awning, sat an old man. His clothes were worn, his face lined with years of hardship, and a simple bowl rested in front of him for coins. Jonathan slowed the car and studied him. There was something in the man's eyes, a quiet depth, a strange calm, and an awareness that seemed far beyond the ordinary. Most people would have driven past without a second glance, but something about this man stopped Jonathan in his tracks. On a sudden impulse, Jonathan parked the car and approached the man. "Excuse me," he said softly, unsure why he felt compelled to speak. The man looked up slowly, his eyes meeting Jonathan's with a steady gaze that seemed to pierce right through him. "Can I help you?" the man asked, his voice calm but filled with a certain weight. Jonathan hesitated, then said, "I have children, triplets. They were born blind. I feel like there's something you might understand. Would you come with me?" The old man studied Jonathan for a long moment, then nodded. "I will come," he said simply, gathering his few belongings. He walked with surprising steadiness, as if he knew exactly where he was going. Jonathan offered him a ride, and soon they were back at the mansion, the rain streaking the windows like tiny rivers of silver. Inside the mansion, the children were playing quietly in the sunroom. They had learned to enjoy their games and exercises, but a strange excitement filled the room when Jonathan entered, the old man beside him. "Children," Jonathan called, "I have a visitor. His name is Elias." The triplets stopped their play immediately. Amira tilted her head, curious. "A visitor?" she asked softly. Leo's fingers brushed Sophia's hand, a mixture of excitement and caution in his touch. Sophia giggled, sensing the change in the air. Elias knelt down to their level, his hands resting gently on the carpet. "Hello, little ones," he said, his voice warm and soothing. "I've heard so much about you." The triplets were silent for a moment, unsure how to respond, but there was something in his tone that felt safe, kind, and inviting. Slowly, Amira reached out her hand to touch his arm. The feeling of warmth and strength in his presence made her heart flutter. Over the next few hours, Elias began to talk with the children. He didn't speak of doctors, treatments, or complicated machines. Instead, he told stories of distant lands, of mountains and rivers, of sunsets painted in colors the children could only imagine. He described the feel of wind on a hilltop, the shimmer of sunlight on water, and the songs of birds at dawn. As he spoke, the children listened with wide-eyed wonder. It was as if each word opened a small window in their minds, allowing them to glimpse a world they had never truly experienced. Jonathan and Isabella watched from a distance, amazed at the connection forming between Elias and their children. There was an unusual calm in the room, a sense of magic that had nothing to do with wealth or luxury. The children laughed, asked questions, and shared their own ideas, and Elias listened patiently, encouraging their curiosity and imagination. After a while, Elias sat quietly, his gaze thoughtful. "You want to see the world, don't you?" he asked gently. The triplets nodded, their small hands pressing together in anticipation. "I can help," he said softly. "Not in the way your doctors have tried, not with machines or medicine, but in a way that opens the eyes in your mind and your heart. It will take patience and effort, but it is possible." The children leaned closer, eager for any hope of light and color. Amira's voice trembled with excitement. "Can you really do it?" she asked. Leo's fingers danced nervously, and Sophia's small laugh bubbled out, full of hope. Elias smiled. "I can guide you, but you must trust me and yourself. The journey will be gentle, but it will require courage and focus." The days that followed were unlike anything the triplets had experienced. Elias began a careful routine, teaching them to feel, sense, and imagine in new ways. He used touch, sound, and vibration to help them connect with their surroundings. He asked them to close their eyes and imagine shapes, colors, and movements, guiding their minds to see through concentration and awareness. At first, progress was slow. Some days, the children felt frustrated or tired, unable to understand what Elias wanted them to feel. But Elias was patient, never scolding, never hurried. One morning he placed their hands on different objects: a glass of water, a soft cloth, a small wooden bird. He asked them to describe what they felt, not just in shape but in light and energy, teaching them to sense the presence of things beyond touch. Amira felt the edges of the glass and imagined it shining with a clear light. Leo held the wooden bird and pictured it fluttering in the sun. Sophia touched the cloth and imagined a rainbow stretching across the sky. The exercises were strange, magical, and difficult, but the children began to glimpse a world that had always been hidden from them. Elias also encouraged the children to explore the mansion in new ways. He asked them to walk slowly, guided only by their memory and touch, to notice sounds, and to feel the flow of air. He taught them to listen for echoes, footsteps, and the subtle shifts in the environment. Slowly, their senses sharpened, and they began to understand the world in ways they never had before. The parents watched in amazement. Jonathan could hardly believe what he saw, his children moving with more confidence, sensing things he never imagined they could. Isabella often sat with tears in her eyes, listening as Elias described the exercises and seeing the joy in the children's faces. There was a new hope in the mansion, one that came not from medicine or money, but from patience, wisdom, and a deep understanding of the human spirit. Elias did not stay in one place for long. He encouraged the triplets to practice on their own, giving them small tasks and challenges to complete each day. "The world is full of light," he told them one afternoon, "but light comes in many forms. Sometimes it is felt, sometimes it is imagined, and sometimes it is seen. You will learn to recognize it in all its shapes." The triplets embraced the challenge with enthusiasm. They learned to describe the sunlight on the carpet, the warmth of a chair, and even the gentle movement of shadows. They began to recognize patterns in sound, differentiating the footsteps of Jonathan from the soft tapping of the rain on the windows. Every day brought new discoveries, and with each discovery came a small spark of excitement. One evening, as the children sat together in the library, Amira spoke softly. "I think I felt a color today," she said, her voice trembling. Leo's fingers brushed hers in encouragement. "Me too," he said, his excitement clear in every word. Sophia laughed softly. "It's like magic," she whispered. The parents exchanged looks filled with cautious hope. Could it be possible? Could their children actually begin to see? Elias smiled quietly, observing the children's reactions. "You are learning to see in ways most people do not," he said. "The mind can learn to perceive, and the heart can guide the eyes. The journey is only beginning, but you are already discovering light." The mansion itself seemed to change as the children progressed. Rooms that had once been ordinary now felt alive with texture, sound, and energy. The children ran their hands along walls, touched furniture, and listened to the echoes of their movements with a newfound awareness. They began to recognize each room by its unique sound, smell, and texture, imagining the way it would look if they could see it. Outside the mansion, the rain continued to fall, but inside, a new light filled the rooms. A light that came from hope, learning, and the belief that even the impossible might be possible. The children's bond with Elias grew stronger with each passing day. They trusted him, listened to him, and followed his guidance with enthusiasm and courage. And in return, he taught them not just to feel the world, but to believe in themselves, to trust in their own abilities, and to imagine the world in ways that no one had shown them before. By the end of the month, small but remarkable changes had begun. Amira could sense shapes more clearly, Leo could see movements in his mind, and Sophia could identify subtle differences in light and shadow. They were not fully seeing yet, but they were beginning to glimpse a world beyond darkness, a world they had only dreamed of. Jonathan and Isabella felt a mixture of pride, amazement, and hope. Their children, who had once seemed trapped in darkness, were discovering light through their own courage and the guidance of a wise old man who had appeared like magic in their lives. For the first time, the family dared to imagine a future where sight might not be impossible, where the triplets could experience the world in ways they had never known. And so, the days continued, filled with discovery, laughter, and learning. The mansion was no longer just a home. It was a place of growth, curiosity, and hope. The triplets had begun a journey that would change their lives forever, and Elias had become a guide, a teacher, and a friend whose presence would remain in their hearts long after he was gone. Little did they know that the most extraordinary changes were still ahead. that the miracle they had dreamed of was closer than they could imagine, and that one day, the darkness that had defined their lives would give way to a new world of color, light, and wonder. The days that followed were unlike anything the triplets had ever experienced. Life in the mansion had always been comfortable, but now it was filled with a new energy, a sense of possibility, and wonder that even Jonathan and Isabella could hardly have imagined. Elias had become a constant presence in their lives, guiding them through exercises that were as mysterious as they were exciting. The children awoke each morning with anticipation, eager to begin the day's lessons. Amira, Leo, and Sophia had grown used to the gentle routine Elias had established, but each day brought new challenges. Some mornings, he would lead them to the garden, asking them to notice the sounds of birds, the rustle of leaves, and the way the wind moved through the branches. He encouraged them to imagine the shapes and colors of everything they could feel and hear. At first, it was difficult. Their minds would wander and the concepts felt abstract. But slowly, with patience and repetition, they began to understand the connection between the world around them and the images in their minds. One morning, Elias had a special exercise prepared. He placed the children in a room filled with small objects of different shapes, textures, and weights. "Close your eyes," he instructed gently. "Do not rush. Let your hands and mind tell you what you see." The children obeyed, their fingers moving carefully across the objects. They felt the smoothness of a glass marble, the roughness of a small stone, and the soft curve of a wooden toy. "Now," Elias said, "imagine them in light. What colors do they have? What shapes do they form in your mind?" Amira's voice was tentative at first. "The marble, I think it is blue, round like the sky," Leo laughed softly. "The stone is brown, rough, strong like the earth." Sophia's smile spread across her face. "The wooden toy, it feels yellow, warm like sunlight." Elias nodded approvingly. "Good. You are beginning to see, not with your eyes, but with your mind and heart. Keep practicing, and one day your eyes will follow." Over time, the triplets' progress became more apparent. They began to notice changes in light and shadow within the mansion. They could sense when sunlight moved across the floor, when a door opened slightly, or when a bird landed near the window. It was subtle, but it was real. Jonathan and Isabella watched in amazement as their children moved with growing confidence, relying less on touch alone and more on an awareness that seemed to expand beyond their previous limitations. One afternoon, Elias led the triplets outside to the garden. The rain had stopped and sunlight poured down, illuminating every leaf and flower. "Today," Elias said softly, "we will explore the world as it truly is. Close your eyes first, feel the ground beneath your feet, the air on your skin, and the warmth of the sun. Let it guide you." The children followed his instructions, stepping carefully on the grass, feeling the uneven earth beneath their toes and noticing the breeze as it brushed against their faces. Elias guided them from one flower to another. "Imagine the colors," he said. "The red of the roses, the yellow of the marigolds, the soft purple of the lavender. Picture them in your mind. Feel their presence, their light." Amira reached out her hands, touching the petals gently. "I think I see it," she whispered. "Red, warm like fire," Leo laughed quietly. "The yellow is bright like sunlight on my face." Sophia closed her eyes, smiling as she imagined the lavender. "Soft purple, gentle, calm." Elias nodded, pride shining in his eyes. Days turned into weeks, and the children's senses continued to grow sharper. Elias introduced more complex exercises. He taught them to differentiate subtle shades of light, to sense shapes in the distance, and even to perceive depth through sound and touch. The exercises were challenging, but the triplets' determination never wavered. They encouraged each other, laughed at small mistakes, and celebrated every tiny victory. One evening, after a particularly long day of exercises, Amira sat quietly by the window. "I think I can almost see the city," she said softly, her voice filled with awe. "I can feel the shapes of the buildings, the streets, the cars moving." Leo pressed his hand gently on hers. "I feel it too. I can imagine the colors, the lights, the people." Sophia smiled, her eyes shining. "It's like the world is opening up to us piece by piece." Jonathan and Isabella were filled with a mixture of hope and wonder. They had never expected such progress. The mansion, once just a home, had become a place of discovery, magic, and learning. The children were no longer limited by darkness. They were beginning to navigate the world in ways that seemed impossible. guided by the wisdom and patience of a man who had appeared in their lives like an answer to a long-held prayer. As the weeks passed, the exercises became more advanced. Elias introduced light patterns, asking the children to sense changes in brightness and shadow. He guided them through simple shapes, teaching them to recognize squares, circles, and triangles through touch and imagination. Then he combined the exercises, asking them to visualize entire scenes: a sunlit park, a flowing river, a bustling street. The children's minds grew stronger, sharper, and more attuned to the world around them. One morning, Elias led the triplets to a small room filled with mirrors. "Do not be afraid," he said gently. "These mirrors will help you connect your mind with your eyes. Close your eyes first, feel the space, imagine the shapes. Then slowly open your eyes and see what happens." The children hesitated but trusted him. One by one, they followed his instructions, feeling the mirrors, imagining their reflections, and then, with tentative movements, opening their eyes. The first moments were astonishing. Amira blinked rapidly, adjusting to the light and shapes before her. She could see her own face, the reflection of Leo and Sophia beside her, and even the soft sunlight filtering through the window. I see myself," she whispered, tears of joy streaming down her face. Leo laughed, overwhelmed with happiness. "I can see you, Amira. I can see the room, everything." Sophia clapped her hands, smiling broadly. It's beautiful." Jonathan and Isabella entered the room and gasped. The children were laughing, crying, and pointing at everything around them. The colors, the shapes, the light. It was a world they had never imagined could be theirs. The parents held each other, tears of gratitude flowing freely. Elias watched quietly, a serene smile on his face. "You have worked hard," he said softly. "You have opened your minds, your hearts, and now your eyes follow. Remember, sight is only the beginning. True vision comes from understanding, feeling, and appreciating the world around you." The transformation did not stop there. With their newfound sight, the triplets explored the mansion, the gardens, and even the city outside with wonder and curiosity. Every flower, every tree, every street became a source of amazement. They laughed at the colors they had only imagined, marveled at the shapes of buildings, and delighted in the smallest details they had never noticed before. Elias continued to guide them, teaching them how to observe carefully, appreciate beauty, and notice the subtle details that made the world vibrant and alive. He encouraged them to use their minds and hearts, not just their eyes, to truly see. "The world is more than what you see," he told them one afternoon. "It is also what you feel, understand, and imagine. Sight without understanding is incomplete. You must combine them." The children listened intently, absorbing his wisdom like sponges. They learned to describe what they saw, not just in color and shape, but in emotion, texture, and feeling. They painted scenes with words, laughed at mistakes, and discovered the joy of seeing themselves and each other in new ways. The mansion, once a place of routine and comfort, had become a playground for learning, exploration, and creativity. Even the parents noticed changes in themselves. They had always loved their children, but now they saw them in a new light, literally and figuratively. The bond between parent and child deepened as they shared discoveries, laughed together, and marveled at the miracle of sight. Jonathan often held the children's hands as they walked through the mansion, watching their eyes light up with wonder. Isabella spent hours describing flowers, paintings, and sunsets, sharing in their joy and delight. One evening, as the sun set over the city, the triplets sat together on the balcony. The sky was painted with brilliant shades of pink, orange, and purple. Amira held Sophia's hand, and Leo leaned against Amira's shoulder. "I never knew the sky could look like this," Amira whispered, awe in her voice. "It's more beautiful than I imagined." Leo nodded, his eyes wide. "And the world, it's even bigger than we thought." Sophia smiled softly, a quiet joy in her voice. "Thank you, Elias," she said. "We would never have seen this without you." Elias, standing a few steps away, watched the children with a mixture of pride and quiet happiness. "You have done all the work," he said gently. "I only guided you. Remember, the true gift is not just seeing, but understanding, feeling, and appreciating the world every day." The triplets had changed. They were no longer the children trapped in darkness. They had learned to see, not only with their eyes, but with their hearts and minds. The mansion, the city, and the world beyond were now full of color, light, and life. And though their journey was far from over, the first steps had been taken, steps that would shape their lives forever. For the first time in their lives, Amira, Leo, and Sophia felt truly free. They could see, explore, and experience the world as they had always dreamed. And the world in return welcomed them with open arms. The mansion was quiet in the early morning, the soft light of dawn filtering through the large windows. Amira, Leo, and Sophia were already awake, eager to begin the day. The world outside seemed brighter than ever before, full of colors, shapes, and details they had only dreamed of before Elias appeared in their lives. Their journey from darkness to sight had been long and challenging, but the reward was more wonderful than anything they could have imagined. The triplets moved through the mansion with confidence, their senses sharp, their minds alert. Every object, every surface, every shadow now held meaning and beauty. Amira traced the patterns on the walls with her eyes, noticing the delicate designs she had only felt before. Leo ran his fingers over the edges of furniture, now able to see the shapes he had memorized. Sophia laughed softly as she noticed the sunlight sparkling on the glass surfaces, a simple pleasure that filled her heart with wonder. Elias had continued to guide them, though his role had changed. The exercises that had once been mysterious and challenging were now part of the children's daily routine, integrated naturally into their lives. He taught them not just to see, but to understand, to appreciate, and to move through the world with awareness and curiosity. The mansion had become a classroom, a playground, and a sanctuary all at once. One morning, Elias brought a small wooden box into the sunroom. The children gathered around, eyes wide with curiosity. "Today," he said, "you will experience something very special. You have learned to see the world around you, but it is time to understand the depth of perception, the beauty of connection and memory." Inside the box were small, ordinary objects: a pebble, a feather, a tiny wooden figurine, and a few other items. "You have touched and imagined these before," Elias explained. "Now I want you to see them fully, notice every detail, and remember how they make you feel. Sight is more than recognizing shapes. It is understanding essence, texture, and story." Amira picked up the pebble first. She turned it in her hand, noticing the tiny lines and patterns on its surface. "It is smooth, yet there are so many details," she said softly. "It feels alive somehow." Leo examined the feather, marveling at the delicate strands and the soft curve. "I can almost feel the wind that carried it," he whispered. Sophia held the wooden figurine, a small bird she had felt many times before, and smiled. "I know you now," she said quietly, "more than ever." The day passed in a blur of discovery. Elias guided them through the mansion and garden, pointing out subtle details that they had never noticed before. The veins on a leaf, the tiny patterns in the carpet, the shadow of a tree bending across the lawn. Each discovery was a joy, a reminder that the world was richer than they had imagined, full of beauty waiting to be noticed. By mid-afternoon, the triplets were outside in the garden, the sunlight warm on their faces. Birds sang from the trees, the flowers swayed in the breeze, and the distant city buzzed with life. The children ran lightly across the grass, their eyes wide with wonder, seeing everything for the first time in its fullness. Amira paused, looking at the roses in bloom. "I never knew red could be this bright," she said softly. Leo smiled, watching a butterfly flit past. "And yellow is more alive than I imagined." Sophia reached out to touch the petals gently. "The world feels complete," she whispered. Jonathan and Isabella watched from the veranda, their hearts overflowing with pride and love. Their children had moved beyond dreams and imagination into reality, embracing the world with joy and wonder. They had worked hard, practiced diligently, and had been guided by Elias, but the children themselves had discovered the courage and curiosity necessary to truly see. The parents could hardly contain their emotions, knowing that this moment would be remembered for the rest of their lives. Elias called them together later that evening. The sky had turned a soft orange and pink, the sun dipping slowly toward the horizon. "You have learned to see," he said gently. "But true vision is more than sight. It is understanding, compassion, and appreciation for the beauty and complexity of life. You must carry this knowledge with you wherever you go." The children listened intently, their eyes shining with gratitude. Amira spoke first. "We have learned so much, Elias. You taught us not just to see, but to notice, to feel, and to understand." Leo added, "I can see my world now, but I also see how important it is to listen, to touch, and to remember what it feels like to be in darkness." Sophia smiled softly. "We will never forget, Elias. You have changed our lives forever." Elias nodded, his expression calm but full of warmth. I only guided you, he said. The true work came from you, the patience, courage, and imagination that made this possible. Never forget that. And now it is time for me to continue my journey. But remember, the world is always ready to show you more. Keep exploring, learning, and appreciating everything around you. The triplets hugged Elias tightly, their emotions overflowing. For days they had waited for this moment, and now it had come. They had sight, understanding, and a sense of freedom that had been impossible before. Yet they also understood the importance of gratitude, humility, and the lessons they had learned along the way. After Elias departed, the mansion felt both quiet and alive. The triplets moved through their home with ease, noticing things they had never seen before. They explored every room, touching surfaces, observing patterns, and marveling at details that had been invisible to them. The world had expanded beyond their imagination, and every corner held a new discovery. Outside, the garden had become a favorite place. The triplets spent hours observing flowers, trees, and animals, delighted by the colors, shapes, and movement. They ran across the grass, laughed at the flight of birds, and watched sunlight dance on the leaves. Every moment was a lesson, a joy, and a chance to grow. Jonathan and Isabella noticed more than just the triplets' sight. They noticed their confidence, independence, and curiosity. Amira began drawing sketches of the garden, translating her new vision into art. Leo started documenting the shapes and patterns he observed, fascinated by the geometry of the world. Sophia wrote short stories, describing the beauty she now saw in vivid detail. Their talents and creativity blossomed in ways that had been hidden before, unlocked by the gift of sight and understanding. The family also began to venture into the city more often. The triplets marveled at the streets, the buildings, and the people. They learned to navigate with independence, using both their eyes and their sharpened senses. Each journey outside was a combination of adventure and discovery, filled with laughter, curiosity, and joy. They noticed details others overlooked, the subtle color of a brick, the shadow of a tree stretching across a sidewalk, or the way sunlight reflected off windows. One weekend, Jonathan took the family to the park, a place he had visited often in his own childhood. The triplets were amazed by the open space, the movement of water in the fountains, and the variety of people enjoying the day. Amira watched children play, their expressions bright and animated. Leo examined the ducks swimming in the pond, noting the reflections in the water. Sophia wandered through a field of flowers, touching petals and watching bees flit from blossom to blossom. Every detail was a marvel, a celebration of life itself. As the weeks turned into months, the triplets' lives became a blend of learning, exploration, and joy. They no longer relied solely on memory or imagination. They saw the world fully and embraced it with wonder. Yet they never forgot the lessons Elias had taught them: patience, awareness, empathy, and appreciation for life in all its forms. Sight had changed everything, but the values and understanding they had gained were even more important. One evening, as the family gathered in the living room, Amira spoke softly. I remember when we used to sit by the window, wishing we could see the world. Now I feel like we can understand it too, not just with our eyes, but with our hearts. Leo nodded. Everything looks different, brighter, and alive, and I think we understand more than we ever could have imagined. Sophia smiled, her eyes shining. And we have learned to appreciate every single detail, every sound, every color, and every movement. Life is more beautiful than we dreamed. Jonathan and Isabella hugged their children, their hearts full. They had witnessed an incredible transformation, one that went beyond wealth, luxury, or comfort. The children had gained independence, curiosity, creativity, and a love for life that was impossible to measure. And though the journey had been long, the rewards were extraordinary. The story of Amira, Leo, and Sophia was no longer about darkness or limitation. It was about courage, patience, guidance, and the power of hope. It was about learning to see, understand, and appreciate the world in its fullest sense. And though Elias had returned to his own journey, his presence remained in the hearts of the triplets, a reminder that even the smallest acts of guidance, kindness, and wisdom could change a life forever. On the terrace one evening, watching the sun set in brilliant shades of orange and purple, Amira whispered, Thank you, Elias. You showed us that the world is beautiful in more ways than one. Leah added, We will never forget what you taught us. We will keep exploring, learning, and seeing with our hearts as well as our eyes. Sophia smiled, watching the colors shift across the sky. The world is ours now, and it is more amazing than we ever imagined. And so the triplets embraced their new life, full of color, light, and wonder. They explored, learned, and appreciated every moment, knowing that sight was not just about seeing, but about understanding, feeling, and loving the world in all its complexity. Their journey had been extraordinary, and the lessons they had learned would guide them forever. The mansion, once quiet and controlled, was now filled with laughter, exploration, and joy. The triplets had grown into confident, curious, and thoughtful children, capable of navigating the world with both eyes and heart wide open. And though challenges would still arise, they were ready, armed with courage, knowledge, and a sense of wonder that could never be taken away. The story of Amira, Leo, and Sophia had reached a beautiful conclusion. Darkness had been replaced by light. Fear had been replaced by confidence. Imagination had been replaced by understanding. And the gift of sight, combined with wisdom and love, had transformed not only their lives, but the lives of everyone around them. The world was no longer a mystery. It was an adventure, waiting to be explored, understood, and appreciated in all its brilliance. And the triplets, once blind, had learned to truly see for the first time in their lives.